Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that is this idea of being too nice. You know that feeling when you're constantly bending over backwards for other people, and sometimes it feels like they're kind of walking all over you. So we're diving deep into the Nice Guy's Guide to Self-Respect and Assertiveness today to see if we can unpack some of the key takeaways that might help us break free from this pattern.
Yeah, this book is really interesting because it really challenges this idea that being super agreeable is always a good thing.
Right.
And it actually argues that it can totally backfire, making people disrespect you or even preventing you from having really genuine connections with people.
Yeah, I'm kind of a counterintuitive idea, right? Like most of us are taught to be nice to be agreeable.
Right.
And, treat others as we want to be treated and all of that. But there's this quote in the book that really stood out to me. It says, when you're too nice, you become predictable, easy to control, and people start walking all over you. Have you ever felt that in your own life? Like maybe your kindness was taken advantage of, or your willingness to help was just exploited.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
And it usually comes from this deep down fear of conflict or disapproval.
Mm-hmm.
We tell ourselves that being agreeable is the only way to keep things harmonious
Right,
or to avoid hurting other people's feelings.
right.
But what we don't always see is that not having boundaries can actually make people disrespect us
Yeah,
and then ultimately lead to us feeling resentful.
absolutely. And the book dives into this whole cycle of people-pleasing and how it could be really damaging to your well-being.
Yes.
The author says, pleasing everyone is a losing game. And I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure.
We try to make everybody happy, and in the process, we end up ignoring our own needs.
Totally.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So if setting boundaries is the key to getting out of this people-pleasing trap, how do we actually do that?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Because it can feel really intimidating,
It does.
especially if you've spent your whole life putting everybody else first.
Right.
The book really emphasizes understanding what boundaries are and why they're so important. And it's not about, putting up walls or becoming this cold, distant person.
Yeah.
It's about communicating what you need and what your limits are
Yeah.
in a clear and respectful way, letting people know what you're okay with and what you're not okay with.
I think for a lot of us, the biggest challenge is getting over that fear of confrontation.
Ugh, it's so true.
It's so much easier to just go with the flow and not rock the boat, even if it means sacrificing your own well-being.
You're telling me it's a real struggle. And the book acknowledges that it takes courage to step outside of that comfort zone and to start asserting yourself. But it also talks about how rewarding it can be.
Okay.
When you set boundaries, you get your power back and you make space for relationships that are more genuine and fulfilling.
Okay, so I'm seeing the connection here between boundaries, self-respect, and ultimately having healthier relationships. But what about that need for validation that we all have? The book says, and this one really hit me, your worth isn't based on how many people approve of you.
That's such a powerful statement.
It is.
And it's so hard to really internalize that, especially when, we're bombarded with messages all the time telling us that we need to be liked.
Yeah.
We need to be admired. Everybody's got to like us. But the book wants us to shift our focus and see that real confidence comes from inside, not from other people validating us.
Right.
And that's a big shift.
It is.
It's super easy to fall into that trap of looking to other people for approval, especially with social media these days. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
our worth is all about how many likes we get, how many followers we have,
Right.
all these external achievements. But this book wants us to challenge that
Yeah.
and think about where our self-worth really comes from. Our values, our beliefs, what we've actually accomplished in life.
So basically, we have to retrain our brains to stop looking for that outside approval
Yeah,
and actually recognize that we have value just inherently.
exactly.
But that's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. It's a total mindset shift.
Right.
And it takes work. You got to be intentional about it.
So are there practical things we can do?
Yeah, totally. The book gives a bunch of different strategies for building self-confidence, like recognizing when you're putting yourself down and challenging those thoughts.
Yeah.
Focusing on your strengths, what you're good at,
Right.
setting realistic goals, and celebrating even the little wins.
I like that, celebrating the little wins. It's easy to get caught up in wanting to be perfect or comparing yourself to other people.
Oh my gosh, yeah, all the time.
Right.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is. But this book is reminding us to appreciate the progress we make and to
Yes,
be proud of the effort we're putting in,
absolutely.
even if it doesn't look like everybody else's.
Exactly. And, speaking of progress, one of the things the book really emphasizes is making sure your actions match up with your values and what you want to achieve in life.
Okay.
It's all about asking yourself, what do I really want?
Yeah.
And then going for it intentionally.
See, I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. Like, we might have these vague ideas of what we want,
Mm-hmm.
but then we're afraid to actually go after them,
Yeah,
or we feel guilty for putting our own needs first.
so true. And that's where this idea of owning your desires comes in.
Okay.
The book says it's normal to have ambitions,
Right.
to want things for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to let go of the guilt and shame
Yeah.
that we sometimes feel around that. And the author says this. It's normal to have desires. It's normal to want more. And the moment you stop feeling guilty about going after what you want, life gets better.
I love that. That's such a freeing thought. But honestly, for a lot of us who've spent so long putting other people first,
Right.
it can feel really selfish to start prioritizing our own wants and needs.
I get that. It's a big shift. But the book really tackles that idea. It says that putting yourself first isn't actually selfish.
Okay.
In fact, it says that neglecting yourself ends up hurting you and the people you care about.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're burned out and resentful, you can't really show up for anybody.
Right. So it's not about becoming self-absorbed
No.
or like ignoring other people's needs. It's realizing that taking care of yourself
Exactly.
is essential for your well-being.
Yes.
And then you can actually be more present and supportive in your relationships.
100%. The book talks a lot about finding ways to nourish yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and it's not about escaping from your responsibilities.
Right.
It's about creating routines that give you energy and support your overall well-being.
It's like that saying, you have to fill your own cup first.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
So the book talks about practical tips for incorporating self-care.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be these huge, grand gestures. It's about finding small things that make a big difference.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like spending a few minutes each day meditating.
Okay.
Going for a walk outside, listening to your favorite music.
Right.
Anything that really nourishes you. And you got to make it a non-negotiable part of your day.
Okay. I see how all these pieces fit together now. Setting boundaries, building that self-confidence, owning our desires, taking care of ourselves. It's like a roadmap to break free from people-pleasing
It is.
and actually build a more authentic and fulfilling life. But I still have this one worry. What happens to our relationships when we stop being nice all the time?
That's a good question. And the book talks about this directly. It challenges this assumption that being agreeable is the only way to keep the peace.
Okay.
It actually says that you need mutual respect and authenticity
Right.
for real intimacy and connection to grow.
So it's not about becoming a jerk or
no.
pushing people away. It's about being your true self
Yeah.
with your needs, with your boundaries, with your desires.
And letting other people be themselves, too.
Right.
And when we do that, when we're authentic and we communicate what we need clearly,
Mm-hmm.
and it creates space for those deeper connections.
Okay.
And you might even find that the people who really value you
Right.
will respect your boundaries and will appreciate your honesty.
It's almost like filtering out
It is.
the superficial relationships
Yeah.
and attracting the ones that are based on respect and genuine affection. But what about conflict? Like, conflict is going to happen in any relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it better to just avoid it and keep things peaceful?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But the book actually says that avoiding conflict can make things worse.
Really?
Because when we don't deal with things, when we ignore our feelings, resentment builds up.
Mm-hmm.
And then those problems usually come back even bigger later.
So we're not avoiding it, we're just postponing it.
Exactly. So it's more about learning how to handle conflict in a healthy way.
So how do you do that?
Well, the book talks about assertive communication,
Okay.
which is all about expressing your needs and your feelings clearly and respectfully,
Right.
while also really listening to the other person's side,
Okay.
and then trying to find a solution that works for both of you.
Assertive communication sounds great
Right.
in theory,
Right.
but it's a skill.
Oh, for sure.
Right. It takes practice, especially if you're used to just being passive or avoiding conflict altogether.
Totally. And the book gives you tips and techniques
Okay.
to help you develop that assertiveness.
Like what?
Like using I statements to express your feelings.
Okay.
Or practicing active listening so you really understand what the other person is saying.
Right.
It's all about practice.
I think for a lot of us, it comes down to this fear of rejection.
Oh, yeah.
or disapproval. We think if we stand up for ourselves,
Yeah,
we'll ruin the relationship,
right.
or the other person won't like us anymore.
Exactly. And the book wants us to challenge that belief. It says that healthy relationships can handle disagreements
Okay.
and that expressing your needs and your boundaries is actually a sign of respect.
For yourself and for the other person.
Exactly. So instead of being afraid of losing the relationship,
Hmm.
you can see it as a chance to make it stronger.
Through honest communication.
Exactly. But what happens if the other person doesn't like it?
Right.
When you start setting boundaries,
Hmm.
what if they try to push back or manipulate you?
That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, that's when you got to be firm. Hold on to your boundaries. Stay true to what you believe in.
Okay.
You have a right to protect yourself.
Even if it means having tough conversations.
Yeah, sometimes.
Or making hard choices.
Yeah. But it's about taking ownership of your life.
I'm starting to see how all of this connects to that bigger picture.
It's not just about saying no.
Right?
It's not just about boundaries.
It's about choosing the life you want.
Yes.
And choosing the people you want to be around.
It's about going from passive to active, designing a life that you actually want.
Okay?
One that aligns with your values and what you're passionate about. And that includes your relationships.
Hmm.
Choosing relationships that are built on mutual respect,
Right.
support, and genuine connection.
So it's not about being alone.
No.
Or isolating yourself.
The book actually reminds us that we need relationships. They're important for our well-being, but it challenges us to think about what those relationships should look like.
To make sure they're based on authenticity,
Yeah.
respect shared
Yeah.
values,
Mm-hmm.
not just a need to please or be liked.
Right.
It's pretty amazing to think about going from constantly people-pleasing to actually having self-respect and being assertive.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you've spent like years suppressing those desires and ambitions that you have? How do you even know what you want anymore?
That's so real, and the book gets that. It can be a real journey to figure that out, especially if you've always put everyone else first. It suggests starting slow. Reflect on what brings you joy, what gets you excited, what values are really important to you.
So it's like relearning how to listen to yourself.
Totally.
That inner voice that gets drowned out by all the expectations and the noise around us.
Exactly. And the book talks about things like journaling or meditating or even just getting out in nature
Mhm.
to help you quiet your mind and reconnect with that intuition. It's about finding those passions and those dreams that maybe got pushed aside or you told yourself were important.
I love that giving ourselves permission to dream again. It's like rediscovering that childlike sense of wonder that we lose sometimes as adults.
Right. And once you start to connect with those desires, the book says take action.
Okay.
Even if it's just small steps at first. Set goals, make a plan, and start doing something consistently to move towards what you want.
So it's not just wishful thinking.
No.
It's about actually making those dreams a reality.
Exactly. You got to put in the work.
But what about being afraid to fail?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. What if you put yourself out there and things don't go the way you planned?
Well, the book talks about that too. It actually says that failure is part of growing and learning.
Okay.
It encourages us to see challenges as opportunities and remember that setbacks happen to everyone.
So it's not about seeing failure as like a personal flaw.
No.
It's more about seeing it as feedback that helps you learn and get closer to your goals.
Exactly. And don't forget to celebrate your progress no matter how small it seems. Acknowledge the effort you're putting in, recognize how far you've come, give yourself credit for those steps.
So it's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah, finding the joy in the process of growing and learning.
I like that. But what about those people who try to hold you back, the naysayers, the critics? How do you deal with them?
The book says to build up your self-validation, recognize that your worth doesn't come from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to trust your own judgment, tune out the negativity, and surround yourself with people who support you and are happy for your successes.
It's like creating a positive bubble around yourself.
It is. You're in control of who you let into your life and whose opinions really matter.
Choose the people who lift you up
Exactly.
and help you be your best self. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Nice Guy's Guide, I think the big takeaway for me is that it's not about trying to become someone else. It's about rediscovering the awesome person you already are.
Yes.
The one who knows their worth, sets healthy boundaries, and goes after their dreams with passion and courage.
I love that. It's about reclaiming your power, embracing who you are, and creating a life that reflects your true self. And it's totally worth it, even if it means getting out of your comfort zone and breaking free from those old people-pleasing habits.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to start that journey of self-discovery, honor your needs, and let your light shine bright. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, and until next time, keep on rocking your awesome, authentic selves.